takes a couple seconds. Here we go. So we're live. Hello, Practical Magic Show family. As you know by now, we're always a beat behind you. So we'll get caught up. And looks like we're live, Meredith. I don't know if you can see us.
Yes, I can. Let's see, share the video file or share the screen?
So just under our picture, you should see like, comment, share. You see that? And if
I see the share button, and then it's asking me for a video file or share screen.
Oh, you know what? Forget it. We'll just deal with it later.
Okay.
So welcome to episode 13 of the Practical Magic Show. I've been really deeply looking forward to this conversation for weeks, really, since we initially talked about it. And our show today is about how to connect with anybody you want through connection and service. And I am absolutely convinced there is no better person I could be talking to about this than you. I mean, nobody could convince me otherwise. So, that's your magic to me. And the Practical Magic Show is about revealing magic and then bringing in practical ways for the audience and myself, and maybe reminders for yourself to implement them into your life. And so for me, magic is operating beyond logic and beyond conditioning. And there's a lot of conditioning and logic and overthinking around connecting with people and serving people. And you seem to operate beyond that in the realm of magic. And so that's why I'm really excited to have you here. I know you have a successful consulting technology company now, more than the consulting that it was before. You've written books, you're a deeply impactful human being, and you do it from a place that is absolutely pure love and pure joy. And the word that always comes up when I think about you is kindness. There's just such a kindness in your being that, has to be the key somewhere. So we're going to dive into exploring how you think and who you are around connection and service. And you're going to take me to school and teach me all kinds of
Well, Vanessa, I have to tell you, thank you for having me, first of all. I'm so excited to be with you because I love your energy and your spirit. And when you said the word kindness just then, I immediately thought of my dad, because when he died and I was one of the people doing a eulogy for him, that was the word for him. And so it makes me feel like he'd be really proud to know I'm carrying on his legacy, because that was so critical to him, is being kind to others. So I just need to say that to you up front. I love that you mentioned that.
Well, I'm really glad that it hits home like that, because for both you and your dad, I mean, check, you got it. What was so interesting as I thought about our conversation, I thought about you in particular and your magic. Another word comes up that I actually don't think is accurate. And I'll tell you what I mean. The word that comes up is bold. And why I don't think the word is accurate is because my guess is that you don't experience yourself as being bold, but other people who would witness your actions would, wow, that was really bold. So one example that I can, you will just reach out to anybody. It seems to me, famous, not famous, will they get back to you? Will they not? There's no thinking for you around reaching out. I'm guessing. And so that's why I'm saying I see you as bold. Like, hey, let me just connect you. Oh, you should meet this person. You need to know them. I even remember our conversation the first time you shared a message that said something like, I'd love to meet you. When can we connect? Or it was so it's not bold. I don't know if this makes sense, but I would love to hear your perception of yourself around the way you just will reach out to anybody and how you experience that.
Well, it's been a growth process, Vanessa, because I wasn't always like this. Mm-hmm. I've always believed in building strong relationships. We have people that have worked with our company's products for over 20 years because we're focused on building positive experiences and great relationships with people. It's just that I think I have gotten better at just asking And part of it is expanding my belief about myself. That's where it starts for all of us. What's holding me back from reaching out and asking this person, can we connect? And can we have a phone call or a Zoom call? And it's like, I'm not taking myself so seriously, which is a big deal because I've always been such a serious person. Like, I've got to get this done. I've been intense at times. And so taking a lighter approach, it's not the end of the world. And it's sort of like when you hold tight to something, once you release it, wow, you realize your grips, your hands feel better. And so if I'm gripping tightly to an expectation or a hope for a specific outcome, it doesn't serve me well. I tend to get uptight, I'm anxious. But if I just look at it as, hey, I'm reaching out to them, I'm somebody they ought to know. And kind of like turn the tables as opposed to feeling like, oh, what if they don't like me? And, that whole garbage language talk we do to ourselves, turn it around and say, I'm somebody worth knowing. And therefore, of course, I should reach out to them. Of course, they'll want to know. And I'll just give you, an example you and I talked about in our first conversation. I had read this wonderful book called The Vision Code by Oleg Konovalov. And in that book, he profiled 19 different visionary leaders. And some of the stories of these people just really inspired me. And I thought, I want to know them. I want them on my podcast. So I reached out to some of them. And in my initial interaction, the request to connect, I did this on LinkedIn. I simply said, I just read about you in Oleg's book, and I loved what you had to say about vision and leadership. And I would love to add you to my network. And so when they responded yes, then I thought, all right, what can I do to be of value, to be of service? And I think that's a key thing I've learned to ask that might be valuable for your audience is before I go out to ask somebody for something, I think about how can I serve them first? What could I do that might be useful or valuable to them? And I don't have to know what that is. See, the other way I feel like I've really changed is I was so hung up on how-tos. Well, how do I do this? Well, I got to have it all mapped out before I do this. Not anymore. It's like jump in and see what happens. So I don't have a relationship with them now. So what do I have to lose? So this one person, David Katz, who is the CEO and founder of Plastic Bank, I reached out to him and just said, because this might be useful for people to think about their own, script or words they'd like to say. Thanks for, accepting my request. Or maybe I just said, welcome to my network. I would love to learn more about you and your work in case I know of resources or people to connect you with, because I love making connections. And so he wrote back and he said, sure, sounds like fun. So we got on a call and I had no idea what I might be able to do for him. But I said, because I don't know people internationally that I could connect him with related to keeping plastics from going into the ocean and some of these other supply chain components that are part of his system. I said, are you interested in getting on podcasts? Because I know you've been on some. And he said, yes. And I said, well, I know quite a few that would love to have you as their guest. So I introduced him probably to a half a dozen, and I've continued to do that. And I've also had him as a guest on mine. His podcast episode goes live on May 12th. So I encourage your audience to listen to that when it comes out on Strong for Performance, because this is an amazing human being. And so if I had not reached out to connect with him and to request that call, my life wouldn't be as rich as it is today because of having gotten to know him and learned from him, because his focus has been, who can he become? Not how do I get this done, but who do I need to be in order to make this happen? And that's sort of what, I've adopted as well. Who do I need to be to reach these goals that we have?
There's so many different places that I need to be like, wait, we got to pull this out and look at this and turn this around. I can't wait to go back and listen to that again myself. I really hear several different distinctions that I want to reflect back to see if I'm hearing it the way you're saying it. But one of the biggest hurdles that I've experienced, and I think many people experience in reaching out to someone new, is kind of like you said, like what will they think of me? What's at stake, right? What's at stake if I'm rejected? Mm-hmm. But I hear you coming from what would be possible if we connected. Mm-hmm. That's a powerful shift, right? Because you should know, like it would be great for you to know me, or your life is so much richer after having reached out to them. So this is and it's so beautiful too, because you don't know. And my experience of meeting you was very much a testament to that. I didn't know you at all, like you just, popped into my Facebook world one day and we connected, and it was like this whole portal opened of just connection, relationships, and just cool things that, like, if I hadn't opened that door, none of those things would be there. And you never could know that ahead of time. Mm-hmm. So that was the first thing that I heard, and I love. The second thing was a real shift in you at the epicenter, right? It's instead of, you said you've worked on your belief of yourself. I'm worth knowing, but at the same time, you're not reaching out so they know you, right? You're reaching out to be in relationship and see how you can serve them. What do I need to do? Who do I need to be more of service? But there's not a reflection back on you as a person there, right? It's like you as a person of service. And so I think what I'm wobbling around is that you've kind of eliminated this element of worthiness in there, both by deciding that you're a person who's worthy of knowing, but then taking your worthiness off the table at the same time. Am I picking that up right?
Yeah, absolutely. I love the way you just said that, because when we get past ourselves and how we're coming across, and we focus on how can I serve profoundly, that's taking it up a number of levels. We're not just talking about making a single connection, or, it's not transactional.
Yeah.
And it's not with the expectation of, okay, I've done all these things for you. Mm-hmm. In fact, what was interesting, David Katz is such a person of service himself that when he and I were talking and I was, coming up with names of people for him and resources, he said, well, how can I serve you? And I said, that's not what this conversation is about. See, I could have stopped and said, oh, well, we've got these books. But I thought that would have killed the whole spirit with which I had approached him. It would have felt like a bait and switch.
Yeah.
And so when my mind is totally on service, I can say with all honesty, that's not why we're having this conversation. I'm not here to tell you what you can do for me. I want to see how I can be of help to you. And, there may come a time, but I don't have strings attached. And I think that's very important. And I think years ago in some of my earlier, connections and calls, I was more self-conscious because I was waiting for this opportunity to bring in our stuff. Now, when I have an initial call with somebody, quite often, if it's a 30-minute call, we're 20 minutes in and I'm still asking them questions, right? And so we get towards the end of the call and it's like, well, Meredith, I haven't learned anything about you. Well, that'll come. I'm not here for a single conversation transaction. I'm really here to see what way can I be of help to you. And I think that makes a huge difference.
It feels very important, because being transactional in a relationship is actually pretty hard to do, right? If you're being transactional, are you really being in relationship, or with whom or with what are you in relationship? Because it doesn't appear to be the other person. And I can very much relate to seeing people as targets of opportunity. And you're not doing that. You're seeing people as people. which allows you to relax
Yes.
into the unfolding of a relationship where maybe someday you'll call on them and maybe someday you won't. But that's what I'm hearing.
Well, yes, because I've had so much magic happen around, meeting someone, introducing them to someone else, and then something else comes to me, if not from them, somewhere else. And just in recent months, as we've become more and more intentional about, getting the word out about our 1 million books goal and just being willing to talk about that with people, some of the people I'm meeting and the opportunities we're having are just amazing. And it's because the goal is not so much to sell these books, it's to reduce pain. It's to help people learn how to communicate and connect better at work and at home. And I think that people sense that. I think that's a core message to today, Vanessa, when we talk about what is the magic about connections and relationships. It's being fully present with that other person in such a way that they sense it. I was just speaking to someone yesterday who's been a psychologist for decades, and she and I were having our very first conversation. And I don't know, halfway, 2/3 of the way through it, she said, Meredith, I just feel you are so with me and what I'm saying. And it's not often that people, reflect back to you in the moment how they perceive you being. But it was reinforcing to me because that is what I do. That is who I am, is being fully present with that other person. And it might be helpful to just share. I came upon my purpose statement and wrote about it. And I think that will help people understand this is what drives me. Every single word in this purpose statement has meaning for me.
I also love that you use the phrase "I came upon," because that is exactly how we arrive at.
Yes. Well, it is to serve and love profoundly so others appreciate their value and maximize it.
That's beautiful. And it is exactly who you are.
And so this word appreciate, I'd like to break apart a little bit for folks because I learned something important from Dan Sullivan with Strategic Coach in one of his podcast episodes he did with Joe Polish years ago. And he talked about this word appreciate. And that's the meaning that I'm assigning to it in this purpose statement. And that is just like we invest.
Can I ask you just to repeat the purpose statement one more time?
Oh, sure.
I'd love to hear it again, and then then let's break it apart.
Oh, sure.
Thank you.
To serve and love profoundly so others appreciate their value and maximize it. So appreciating their value, we appreciate, we think of appreciate in terms of expressing appreciation to someone, thanking them, or appreciation in terms of growing in value, like a stock or land that we invest in. But to invest in a person and help them appreciate their own value in their minds by the way we interact with them, we treat them, we respond to them. It's one thing in our own minds to appreciate who someone is, but when we can help them elevate their own feeling of value, that is huge. That's a major contribution. And so when that's driving every conversation I'm having, then it's not a focus on me, because that's not going to elevate anybody. If I'm just talking about me and what I do, it's helping them recognize some strengths of their own that they may not have either discovered before or they don't give themselves enough credit for.
I'm just smiling because I'm thinking back to our first conversation and every interaction since, and it is absolutely you. It is absolutely my experience of you, and it's my experience of myself when I'm with you. And it's really, I wrote this in my intro of you, and it's really true. It's special because it's so powerful, and it's even more magical because it's so not the norm of what people experience. So when someone, it's almost like meeting you and coming into your space is like being outside in a hurricane and coming inside. Like, it's like, and it actually is, it's a huge act of service. And there's an interesting calibration that I know at least I had to experience when I first met you, which was like, am I talking too much about myself? I haven't yet. But what's beautiful about that is actually, I think in so many conversations, we are unaware of what is the other person saying. Are they listening? Your thoughts are going. So you're not as I think what I'm trying to say is your presence and focus on the person in front of you creates a desire to return that presence and focus to you. So even if people don't know that's happening, and that's really powerful.
Mm-hmm.
It also invites them into relationship with you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's so important. And it took a little while for me to add the word love, but I had taken an assessment where love came up as the number one, strength that I had. And I thought, well, you know what? Own it. Just own it, be it as much as I possibly can. The other thing that really struck me, this is a book that a lot of your audience will be familiar with, The Prosperous Coach. But for me, even though I'm not a professional coach, I do informal coaching with people, just, as part of interacting with them. And there was a sentence in that book that was in one of Rich Litvin's chapters that said to ask yourself this question before you have a conversation. And I've done it ever since. And it's an amazing question. How can I serve this person so powerfully that they never forget our conversation the rest of their life? When you dissect that, what that means is you're not talking about yourself, because who is going to remember a conversation the rest of their life where you went on and on about yourself, unless it's in an annoyance kind of memory, which we don't want. It's how can I engage this person? Ask questions, learn about them, throw out some ideas or connect them with someone else, be of service to them, so that they feel that, wow, I'm glad I did that.
Mm-hmm. And what's coming up really strongly the whole time we talk is that when I initially thought about this conversation and serving and connecting to meet whoever you want, and, a line from the book Think and Grow Rich comes up where he says, and I'm going to butcher the quote, everything that you want to create has to come through the hands of another man, right? It's very old school language, but it's a reminder that this whole, I declared 2021 the end of the lone wolf era for me. It's like, enough is enough. You got as far as you can go on this path, move on. But it's this idea that I think, and culturally, it's very American, right? Strap your own bootstraps. But you're kind of pushing against that dynamic and understanding that you can create so much more magically through conversations with other people. But there's actually a magic before your magic that I'm starting to see, which is even being present enough to see people to connect with. Because when you're transactional inside of a relationship, the relationship doesn't take form, right? Or we know what that looks like. But if you seem to have presence even before and beyond that, because I'm just relating to myself, and I'm sure that other people who are listening can relate. A refrain that I can hear myself repeat is, I just don't know who to connect to. I don't know who to reach out to. And you don't seem to have that question in your space. So can we slow this down for a second and just look at how you look at opportunities to connect? Because even before we jumped on, you said something about, I can't remember what post it was, but somebody made a comment and I just thought, I'll connect with him. And that just wouldn't have occurred to me.
Well, you know what? I'm so glad you asked that question, because this is where it's really fun. Because I will, get on Facebook or get on LinkedIn, and I'll kind of scroll down just to see what pops to me, in terms of what somebody writes that may resonate with me. And the particular example that you're describing, opened up a beautiful relationship. It was, and I don't remember, it was one of the posts somewhere related to you. And I don't remember if it was one of your previous magic shows, but I had written, or somebody, either Chris Doris or Devin Bandison had written something, and I responded. And then Mark Silverman wrote a comment, and I was connected with Mark here, but I had never had a conversation with him. And he just wrote like, please let me know if I can help. And I thought, all right, Meredith, pay attention. Don't let this pass, because he was writing it to me.
Yeah.
Let me know if I can help. And I thought, well, I'm sure you can in some way. So I reached out to him. We set up a call. And, it was interesting because he said, Meredith, I never do that.
Mm.
But something in me had me write that to you. So we have formed in just one conversation, and then he just interviewed me for his podcast. There's a lifelong friendship there that I'm just so excited about. And so it's really allowing my intuition to play a role much more than I used to. Like I said, I was more, and you said this, opening up this whole logical, consciously choosing this or in a framework that's structured somehow. And I've learned to just let go of that a bit. And it's not that I'm going down rabbit holes, because we can certainly do that. And I've certainly done that. It's just noticing, where might there be value in connecting with this person, and just in terms of the broader picture of what's possible in my life, their life, the lives around us. Where might there be opportunity to serve?
So that's really interesting to hear you say, because as you say it, I can distort that in my head. So I'm going to distort it for you.
Okay.
Where I could totally take, where could there be value in connecting, into the realm of opportunistic, or if not opportunistic, because I don't tend to go into an opportunity. Like, I think I can be opportunistic, but it actually comes from a place of trying to be a smart business person. So it seems that there's a spectrum, because you said, I don't go down rabbit holes, and you're not being transactional. So there's this whole other space of being in connection where it seems conscious. And then maybe that's where the intuition comes in, because you're not just on the phone with anybody and everyone all day long. There's another kind of, is that where the intuition comes in?
I think it does, because I used to be more accepting of, like almost every LinkedIn connection request and, other connection, Facebook friend connections. I'm more discerning, I think, and more discriminating about who I say yes to there. So it's not like I'm saying yes to everything. It's that, and this whole idea, Melissa Ford and Chris Doris talked about this recently, this slowing down, this slowing down enough to see, where should I be looking right now? Who do I already know? So it can be sometimes going back and looking at past conversations I've had where too much time has gone by since we last connected. And I want to reach out to that person and reconnect with them. So I think, you have to always have your business goals, in mind, because we are, probably most of your listeners are business people. And so we have that. But it's in the context for me of being of greater service overall, and just trusting the right things will emerge. Opportunities are going to come up. I don't have to orchestrate them. What I need to do is be paying attention and just have this idea of how can I be of service? And then also recognizing it's okay to ask, especially if I have served them in some way. It's not a tit for tat, but it's just feeling like within myself that I'm not being a taker, that I am not trying to get something from this person. It's the spirit from which I come, if that makes sense.
It does. It makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense. And I love the distinction between, I'm not there to orchestrate it, but I pay attention. And that's very different. That's very, very different because I recently heard the distinction between being a taker and receiving. Taking and receiving are very different. It's
Mm-hmm.
action, but it's a different spirit with which you perform that action. And I get a similar feeling here where you understand, kind of like one of my biggest takeaways from my conversation with Chris Doris is you're not the star player, you're a participant in the game. So play the game and trust that after you kick the ball, somebody else will, and it'll come back to you. And I get a very similar kind of energy around your exploration and engagement with service.
Mm-hmm. And Chris is one of my favorite people. And, he has that phrase, all in. And so if I go all in with serving this person that's in front of me, I just trust good things will come of it. Even if it is only that they have a great experience with our conversation.
Yeah.
That's an important part of my purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm living my purpose when I have these meaningful conversations with other people, whether it results in something, instant for me or not. It's just not how I'm operating, where I'm operating from when we go into that conversation. But where the boldness comes in, if I could circle back on that, in the past, I think I was more reticent to bring up some of what we're doing. It's that whole, what will they think of me? But now with these books that we have and we're just on fire about reducing the pain in workplaces where people have trouble communicating with each other. And we've now got a book that can help with that. And so it's like when you've got a really good solution that can solve problems, you owe it to the world to talk about it. So here's where it's interesting. When I go back to people that I have formed these strong relationships with, and I say, could you help me? We've got these books now. I want to get into these organizations. Would you consider, thinking of people who might, and giving specific criteria? And, people just are eager to help. I had one fellow tell me one time, you'll get a kick out of this. He said, Meredith, this was after a couple of conversations where I had given him and his executive assistant were on the calls, and I was just throwing out ideas. And he said, Meredith, you create psychological indebtedness in conversations, because I'm sitting here thinking, what can I do for you? You've given me all this stuff. And I thought, well, I took that as a deep compliment, even though, of course, my intent is not to do that. But it's what I like about it is you just, there's no limit to what you're willing to give to somebody, regardless of what they can ever do for you. But if you have that spirit of helping them in any way you can, in as many ways as you can, it's, it's sort of like spreading good energy out in the world. It'll come back in some way. I just believe that deeply.
And I have to imagine that as you've been growing into this way of being over the years, it's probably become easier to trust that because you have more experiences of it returning to you.
That's exactly right.
I know
that's right.
Yeah, that's been my experience of it can be hard to break out of the transactional opportunistic mind frame because you don't have this maybe other people were taught differently, but in my mind, that's the worldview I grew up with. Like, you got to do it and make it happen. And as you engage with it differently, you see like, wow, I actually hardly have to do anything. And this is really fun. And
it's so much easier. It takes the pressure off, because I used to feel under intense pressure in conversations that were potentially sales conversations of, okay, so when am I going to be able to bring this up? And it totally takes away from that being fully present, because I'm in my own thoughts and really listening to what the person is saying and being fully with them. What helped me, honestly, it was really a breakthrough, that one sentence, how can I serve this person so powerfully? They never forget our conversation. I ask myself that every time I get into a conversation beforehand. I'm looking at how can I serve this person? Let me serve this person powerfully. So when I go into the conversation with that mindset, I'm relaxed, I'm calm, because I'm not there to push or promote anything. I'm there to be of service. And people sense that.
Well, I even love that. This is going to probably make you laugh, but I hated that question because what I did with it was so wrong. Well, wrong. I put so much pressure on myself
To serve,
into that.
to deliver service.
Now made it about me, right? It was but the way that I'm hearing the difference, the primary difference in how you approach this, both in connecting and being of service and living into that question, is curiously. You don't
Yes.
know. I was trying to answer that question before I got on the phone. You were living into that question as you were in the conversation. Am I
Beautifully said. Yes, that is an excellent way to distinguish between the two. Yes.
What a total difference that would make.
Isn't that funny? I love that you acknowledge that, because it shows, for one thing, the importance of going back over time and rereading things or re-listening, because we grow, we change, and things hit us differently. I was ready for that question in the way he expressed it,
Yes.
in how I heard it and implemented it, absorbed it and integrated that into my behavior. And so over time, that has just become seamless.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the key. It's like any practice that we have, it has taken practice over time. And so and I think the other thing I've learned to do is to just get over myself more quickly. So if I say something in a conversation where, maybe it didn't come across the way I wanted it to, or, something didn't go as well as I liked, I don't spend as much time beating myself up about it. It's like, oh, what can I learn from that? What's the gift in this? Or as Steve Hardison likes to say, what would you like to create? Given the situation, what would you like to create? So it's that whole idea of creation, curiosity. I love that word. I didn't used to use it at all in the context of asking questions and really learning about someone. When we're genuinely curious, again, the focus is on them, not us. And we are really eager to learn. And so the questions naturally bubble up. It's not like we have this, list of questions. Well, I did number 1, 2, 3. It's not like that. It's that we're listening and we're with this person so intently that the next question comes up automatically because we want to know more. And that's where that curiosity comes in, as opposed to being preoccupied with myself and what do I need to say next to sound smart, look good, be convincing. That doesn't work well.
It doesn't. And it's so true. I remember a couple of years ago, I made my business plan fall in love with the person in front of you as quickly as possible, because I thought about the difference between the people I love and the people I don't know, and the ease with which I would engage, or my ability to be present, or for it to be okay if we got into if something went wrong. And that was the biggest difference. Like, there was no fear, no risk. And it sounds like you're kind of coming from that same place of just love, your number one strength, and allowing that to birth this kind of different way of being with other people.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. It's just a huge difference in how it feels being with someone, to be able to just enjoy them. And discover things about them that, again, you can then hold up to them so they appreciate it about themselves. And you can't do that if you're not observing and you're not fully there.
My final question is, what practices, and maybe this is just what you've explained, but what are the ways that you practice presence? Are there ways outside of being in conversation that you practice presence? I know you talk about listening, but
yes. Well, interestingly, my husband and I have been avid bird watchers for 20 years. And I am not naturally as strong of an auditory learner. And a lot of the times when you're out with birds, you're not going to see them, you're going to hear them. And I was intent on learning these songs. So I listened, to these, that time, tapes over and over again. And now, just like this morning, I went out for a walk in our neighborhood and I'm just practicing listening. How many bird songs can I hear or identify and recognize? And I have to slow down and pay attention in order to do that. And so I try to start my day in that state also by just being quiet. Meditation has not come automatically for me. I'm more of a doer. And so to slow down and just be and listen to my own inner knowing and my own inner voice at times is a practice I still, work on all the time. But I think that's a lot of it. And just and I have a lot of I am statements that I created as a result of, listening to Chris Doris. And so those are, in a sense, affirmations about who I am, who I want to be. And so, one of them is I am the highest level of service. And, to people I encounter. And so when I have said these things over and over to myself for many months, I start absorbing those. And I think that that's really critical. If anyone is struggling with a particular way that they wish they were, just claim it, declare it as an I am now, and it builds it into the subconscious mind as a way of being. A recent example of that, one of my other statements is, I am absolute calmness, clarity, and confidence. And recently I was scheduled to do a Zoom presentation at 8 a.m. At 7 o'clock that morning, we had no internet connection. And I thought, okay, I am absolute calmness, clarity, confidence. How am I going to, so I stayed calm and I just figured out, all right, I can get on my phone, my point of contact or had the slides. And so I figured out how to get on Zoom and be present on my camera on my phone, which I hadn't done before. And she managed my slides and it went beautifully. And then we got internet back because I had a second presentation that afternoon. But she said, Meredith, how did you do that? She said, I would have just been wild. And I shared my affirmation with her. And during my presentation, she shared it because she said, I want to be like that. But, it's these practices that we develop over time and just thinking consciously, what's going to serve me best in accomplishing who I want to be in the world and what I want to do. What kind of impact do I want to have?
That's beautiful. Every time I spend time with you, I learn, but I also just feel uplifted. And I'm sure that everybody watching is having a similar experience of you because of your joy and love and presence and fully living your purpose. So thank you so much. I feel like this 43 minutes took 14 seconds. I mean, it was the fastest 43 minutes of my life. So how would you like people to connect with you? What would you like to share? We could share the link of your book. Tell me.
Sure. Well, I can tell you real quick, our books, we have two, Connect with Your Team, Mastering the Top 10 Communication Skills, and then this companion one, Peer Coaching Made Simple. And they can learn more about those books on our website, which is growstrongleaders.com. And in fact, we have a free chapter from the book on listening at growstrongleaders.com/free if they would like to get that. And of course, I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter, and I would love to connect with people and get their feedback and ideas of what was of value to them today.
I can honestly encourage anyone who feels connected to you to reach out because you will learn from being in conversation with Meredith what being in relationship and present in a conversation means. So Meredith, thank you so much. It was such a joy.
Thank you, Vanessa.